My name is Sanfillipo, and today I'm going to be presenting my English and history of POL. Um, I'd like to start off with English. I'm going to be doing a character analysis on Guy Montauk. Guy Montauk is a dynamic character, and throughout the book, his point of view of life changes drastically. In the beginning of the book, he is ignorant, and at the end, he finds out his true identity with a series of events. With the first quote I used, it went, with the brass nozzle in his fist, with his great python spitting in venomous kerosene upon the world. The blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatter of and charcoal ruins of history, with a symbolic helmet numbered 451 on his solid head. What he's basically trying to say is that he loves his job, and he likes his job, and he's been doing it for 10 years, and he takes pride in what he does, and he's just basically holding on to a family tradition because his dad and his father and his grandfather did the same job as him. And for the second quote I used, he was not happy. He was not happy. He said the words to himself. He recognized this as a true state of affairs. He wore his happiness like a mask, and there was no way of going to knock on her door and asking for it back. On page 9, well, he's now second guessing it because on page 9, Clarice had asked him, are you happy? And he said, of course I'm happy. But throughout the story, on page 12, he's basically he doesn't know how he feels at this point. He says he's wearing his happiness as a mask. The other quote I used was the book. Don't tear it anymore. Faber sank into a chair, his face very white, his mouth trembling. Do not make me feel any more tired. What do you want? I need you to teach me. All right. He was asking if he'll basically do anything to understand how to find out his happiness basically, and so he comprehended what the books are saying, and he risked his whole life basically, and he tried finding his identity through the books. That's why he asked Faber for help. And I'll be moving on to world history. The essential skill I did was students will be able to compare and contrast between past and present revolutions, as well as explain their global impact on political thoughts and personal freedoms. The thesis I wrote was, American and French revolutions have many comparisons and contrasts, but the two that affected both of the revolutions were its inequality and its lack of communication. I'm going to compare the American and French inequalities. The inequalities for the Americans were the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, and the Intolerable Acts. There was more than one Intolerable Act. There was the British basically occupied Boston, and they lived in their homes basically without permission. And the justification I wrote was the inequality that the American colonists had to put up with gave them no choice but to try to overthrow the British Parliament. Their communication wasn't that good. it was lack of inequality with the people, or they could have like easily talked things out. And the French inequalities, the third estate had no power to influence the government. They had no say in anything. And the third estate had to pay taxes for both the second and the first estate. And they had no life because they had too much. They had to work for a lot because all the money that they were working for was for taxes also. My justification was all the money the third estate worked for was to pay off the taxes, and their communication, they had better communication. When it came down to the revolutions, but not like toward the third estate. And the justification I wrote for both of these were both the American and French had to put up with paying crazy amounts of taxes, and that did not benefit them. They also were never treated equally, and that's all they wanted. A contrast the American and French had was, for the Americans, the revolution was successful because they had strong leaders that kept the people in check and stuck what they were fighting for. The majority of Americans caused the American Revolution because of the court system, and the British were trying to rule them. The Americans tried to boycott before they became violent, and the French, the third estate and the second estate and the first estate were living in fear because of the fall of Bastille, and because the third estate was basically they went to the prison and they let out all the prisoners and they took weapons, and the third estate demanded to be represented in the National Assembly. Their tensions were really high, and at this time, peasants attacked and rebelled throughout the countryside. So they basically killed like all the nobles and the rich people. They took their anger out on nobles and they killed senselessly. Like they kill. If you look rich, they just kill you. And it turned out to be like a bloody and like an all-out war. And the justification I wrote was both of the Americans and the French got their constitution, but weren't getting it in very different ways. We're getting it in very different ways. The impact, if a nation does not feel like they have equality and say in the government, then they'll like protest, they'll fight, or there'll even be wars. Like the protests right now on Michael Brown, like there's all because they want to be heard basically, and they want people to know like, what's going on. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions? Which one is it? There it is. Well, I mean, I didn't really get to finish it, but okay.
kind of find an ability. You can do something. So if you can do something, what part of the speech is that?
An adjective?
You do something.
Oh, verb.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sentence says, Apple gave us a computer anyone can use. It is very expensive. What is it? According to the sentence.
The computer, Apple.
Yes. What would you put for Apple?
A noun.
So, what should it be?
A noun.
No. I told you is always, always, always.
Yeah, I know that. You taught us that.
Yeah. I taught you all. Is, am, are, was, were, be, been, been. What? Spanish is the first thing you learn.
An action.
And what's an action?
A verb.
Verbs. So expensive is a noun. What does very tell us about expensive?
It's talking about like how expensive it is.
So the sentence how expensive it is. Describing the type of expense.
Oh, so
Is what?
an adjective.
It is an adjective. What about gave?
Gave is a verb.
Verb. So, what do you put between use and it? What's that?
Oh, it was the. But I was thinking that the comma would go there. I just erased it on my paper.
Alright, put the comma there. Apple gave us a computer anyone can use. Did I end the sentence there?
Yeah.
You could put a period just for the comma. It is very expensive. Is that a